I don't want no oil, a spoiling my shoreline. I like fish much better than crud. I like birds and things, a-creeping and crawling. Won't trade no more oil for blood. The sun done give us all we need to make this country run. But that black demon oil's got us fussing and fighting, and I do believe it's time we was done. I don't want them nukes run by them kooks who think radioactivity is fun. No more three-headed frogs or kids with leukemia. Nuclear power ain't fit for a dog. The sun done give us all we need to make this country run. But that nuclear power's got us fussing and fighting, and I do believe it's time we was done. No nukes!
Good morning, Toledo. Good afternoon, Columbus. And hello to those of you on the internet, wherever and whenever you may be. My name is Joe DeMare, and I'm here with my wonderful co-host,
Rebecca Wood.
Yes, and together Rebecca and I are creating an hour of radio called For a Green Future. For a Green Future is a show where we talk about ecology and the environment, and we talk about it in the ways that it affects you, your wealth, your health, your happiness, the wealth and health and happiness of your friends and your families and your co-workers and the birds and the bees and the trees and the shrubs and the grasses and the little grubs that eat the roots of the plants and the little birds that eat the grubs and everybody and everything, because, like it or not, all of us are together here on this wonderful planet called Earth. And we've got a great show for you today. We're going to just chat for another 10 minutes or so, and feel free to call in, please, at any time, 877-909-1007, or you can text anytime here at 419-973-5841. We're just going to chat about random stuff for a few minutes, and then this week, because this is the last show of 2025, and I kind of wanted to, instead of having a guest, I wanted to talk about a focus of this show, the something that, the really fundamental reason we created this show, and we call it For a Green Future. I wanted to just spend a show talking about that green future. We spend so much time talking about the battles, the things, the forces that are trying to prevent us from getting to a green future. I would really like to spend a little time, and hopefully, if you want to chime in on this, at 877-909-1007 or 419-973-5841 for texts. What do you think the green future is going to look like? What do you think once we've got all this stuff figured out, and once we start actually living on the planet in a way that'll let us survive on the planet, how is that going to be different from what we're doing today? And specifically, how's it going to be better? Because we hear a lot of fear mongering about how terrible it would be.
I will have a jackal and a baby buffalo.
Oh, okay. All right, there you go.
These are ways that the world could be better.
So anyway, that we're going to start talking about that at quarter after.
And some other stuff Joe's going to tell you.
Right. So we got our little bit of randomness at the beginning. Then we are going to talk about the green future. Then it'll be advertisers and patrons, to whom we are eternally grateful. And then, Rebecca, it'll be your turn at the mic. What are we talking about this week?
We are going to talk about cassava plants.
Cassava. Okay. It's a cool word. It's a good Scrabble word.
Indeed.
Right. Yes. And then it'll be ecological news from around the world, and tried to get a sort of a nice holiday mix of good and bad news this week. So kind of interesting. And as I said, hopefully at some point we'll hear from you. So... So good morning and happy holidays. We're right in between the Christmas and New Year's there. And we're certainly having a warm holiday celebration right now because Today, it's going to be, the high is supposed to be 62 degrees, more than 25 degrees above average. And yeah, I know with this past week we had some below average days, but this is why we keep records. This
Yep.
is why the scientists look at all the numbers, because yes, we get below and we get above average, but there's more above average, and the above averages are like today, 25 degrees above average, and the lows are like 4 to 10 degrees below average. So we are warming, folks. The globe is warming. There's no question about it. Even though we have, the administration that's basing their entire energy and environmental policy on the idea that we don't, which is really kind of a bizarre thing going on right now. So it does make it a little harder to be cheery for the holidays. And I actually have, this was not a terribly festive Christmas for me either, because unfortunately I actually lost a sibling just last week, just 1 week ago tonight, actually. She was only 61 years old. It's my sister Rosanne, and she just went to bed, and there was no inclination, no indication that anything was wrong. She had a fine day the day before, hanging out with one of my other siblings, and then she just didn't get up. She just did not wake up that night, and it's just a reminder to me. We none of us know when we're going, and it does it adds urgency to all these things we're trying to get done. All these environmental things we talk about, there's real deadlines. If we keep putting carbon in the air, we're going to cross those deadlines, and we're going to just completely throw the earth out of whack. And so we are changing, but we're reducing our carbon emissions now finally, but we're not doing it fast enough. We don't have the sense of urgency that we all need to succeed at that. And when someone like my sister passes unexpectedly, it's a reminder that all of us only have so much time. This transition has to be done, and it's got to be done now. And it's not just something we think, well, maybe when I'm off there in my 70s or 80s, by then I'll be ready to change. No, you need to get the electric car now, or switch to public transportation. You need to, if you can put solar panels on your house, do it. If you can get geothermal, do it now, because the earth isn't waiting. See, that's the problem, is that the changes that are happening now aren't like, oh, well, they need more time. We're gonna wait on the high temperatures.
Nature doesn't do that.
Nature doesn't work that way. That's in a day like today where we get 25 degrees above average, it's just a stark reminder.
Also, she's been telling us for quite some time we needed to make these changes, and now maybe we need to be whopped upside the head a little.
Yeah, we've been getting the prodding, the tapping on the shoulder.
Excuse me.
Yeah, that's been going on for a while now. So, but I did want to just say a few more words about my sister. She was really a remarkable person. She had a lot of health problems, all of which seemed under control. But she got diabetes when she was very young, and actually she had kidney failure, and so she got a transplant. She got a kidney transplant that included a pancreas. So I did not know at the time that when you get a transplant, they don't take the old organ out, because that would be like traumatic. They just put the new organs in. So she actually had 3 kidneys and 2 pancreases. But the new pancreas cured her diabetes, which was amazing.
I think that was a cover story, and she was really an alien, but never mind.
Well, it was a pretty good cover story, because I grew up with her. Yeah.
Yeah.
So she was expected to only, when she got the transplants, the doctors told her, oh, these last about 7 years, maybe 10 if you're careful. But she was like religious about her medications, and she actually lasted 25 years. So
Good job.
it was amazing. The doctors could not believe it. She just had gone in for a checkup like a month and a half ago, and they were like, whatever you're doing, keep doing that, because this is amazing. She was also just a wonderful person. She worked as a victim's advocate in the justice system. So she took people who'd been harmed by crimes, and she helped them kind of put their lives back together and encouraged them to go and testify in court so that there could be some justice done. And she was well loved. It was kind of amazing at the service. Somebody came up to me and said she was the only person who was equally loved by the prosecuting attorneys, the defender's offices, and the police. Everybody just, thought she was great. And so really going to miss her. That's the first of our siblings. I have 6 siblings, 3 brothers and 3 sisters until recently. And I don't usually use AI, but I used AI for this. I asked it to see the odds of all 7 of us making it to this age. And it was only 45% chance that we'd all make it to this old. So we're kind of lucky in a way. And she was also a great believer in luck. She she did like to gamble, and it was kind of funny because in the hour between, there's calling hours like 1 to 4 and then 5 to 7. In that hour in between, one of my brothers and his daughter went to the local casino there in Bowling Green in her memory, and they spent $25. And on the very last roll, my brother was like, "Come on, Rosanne, help us out."
Wait. There's a casino in Bowling Green now?
No, not Bowling Green. I'm sorry. This is Batavia, New York.
Oh, okay.
Western New York.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, it's called Batavia Downs. And so on the very last spin, they were about to leave to come back to the thing. My brother hits the button, and boom, they win $450. So I guess Rosanne was
came through
looking for him. Yeah.
Good job.
All right. So, so that that may explain why I'm a little bit down today. Still, we're all still recovering from it, but I did want to get more upbeat here. I wanted to talk about the green future, the future that we on this show think we all have to work towards. And I to this day, I believe we will work towards it because, frankly, as I've said before, we don't have a choice because it's either a green future or no future. And, so I wanted to cover this in different areas, how things are going to change. The first area is pretty simple, pretty easy. I'm sure you've heard all this before, but we have to change our energy policies, okay? And that is we switch to solar, we switch to wind, we switch to geothermal. And as our frequent guest, Mark Jacobson from Stanford, has shown, that is perfectly possible. These people that tell you, oh, there's not enough wind energy, or the wind doesn't blow all the time, or the sun doesn't shine all the time. There is so much wind and solar energy. There's actually many, many times as much as we need to meet all our demand.
There's a thing called a battery, which helps you store it, too.
Yes, and there's things called batteries. So there's other technologies that are coming online now, like heated particulate storage. We've done stories on that before, where you just take the excess energy, you use it to heat up sand, and then whenever you need the power, you just run cooling fluid through the sand so it heats up and turns turbines, and boom, you got electricity when you want it, as much as you want it, and you get to control it.
If you don't think hot sand can get really, really hot and stay that way, then I'd make sure you wear your flip-flops at the beach.
Right. Yeah, a definite, a demonstration we've all had of just how much power there is in sunlight. So that needs to kind of underscore, that's the energy part of keeping our civilization going in a green future, okay? And you've all, like I said, regular listeners to the show, you've all heard that before. But there's some other aspects to it that we need to also focus on. And one is this idea of efficiency, okay? Our houses are notoriously energy inefficient right now. Most houses were built back before there was a lot of emphasis on things like insulation. Older houses, the idea was you just have a huge furnace and you just put so much energy out that it doesn't matter that there's no insulation or your windows are leaky. And, that is changing around the world, but not nearly fast enough, because the people who build houses make less profit if they put more energy efficiency in, and that's why there has to be regulation. There have to be laws saying, if you're building a new house, it's got to have this much of a insulation value. So we need to take back the legislative rules, the legislative governing of our country, because what's happened over the past 10 or 15 years is that the people we're supposed to be regulating are the people who are now running the government. In the case of the federal government, it's really direct, because people talk about President Trump, and J.D. Vance, and there's like a half a dozen names that a lot of people who pay attention to the news know, but there's actually, in Trump's cabinet, there's about 15 billionaires, and these billionaires are being put in charge of the federal agencies that regulated their industries. So, he's got guys who made their billions in financial markets, and those are the guys he's putting in charge of the financial markets. So, in other words, the people who need the most regulation are the ones who are now, it's basically the whole federal government right now is a slew of foxes guarding a bunch of chicken coops, and that has to change. So, in a green future, our democracy has to be stronger, because as we slack off in terms of our citizenship responsibilities, as we get lazy and just vote for everybody in this party or that party, and we don't actually look at their policies and their actions, that's when things go downhill, when people stop
because
paying
the stuff
attention.
that we want is very much like having an environmentally sustainable society is very much in the interest of the people,
Yes.
the vast majority of people. It's really even in the interest of the few people who are making a lot of money out of stopping it too.
That is the ironic thing,
Yeah.
is that even billionaires would be better off on in a green planet, in a planet that it may not seem that way to them, because they're all kind of living in these societal bubbles where they go to the exclusive resorts, and they go to the they get their own jet plane instead of having to ride public, or ride along with the public. And so it seems that they're doing better than us, but all of us are doing more poorly, because there's not as much clean water, the air is dirtier, the food isn't as good because there's nutrients are being leached out of the soil. We're all the level's going down for all of us. The fact that they're economically staying up at the top doesn't change the fact that they would also be better off on a green planet, on a more habitable planet. And one of the things that also has to change in that regard is our agriculture. And I think in a green future, organic farming is just going to be normal. Organic farming is just going to be farming.
There you go.
You're not going to have this. What we have right now is a chemically and mechanically dependent farming system that is actively depleting the soil. It reduces the fertility and the nutrition in the food, and we know that it's not sustainable. Because the more you wipe out that layer of topsoil, the more you kill all the microbes and things and the fungi that are keeping the soil productive and healthy, the less good food is for you. And so in a green future, chemicals will get used, like rarely, because you can go to organic farming and just have a slight decrease in production. And I saw a display in a museum once that said, if we switched to all organic, we'd have to have 25% more farmland. But instead of having more farmland, all we need to do is eat a little less meat. Okay, that's also a green future. We eat too much meat. Okay, I'm not saying people have to give up meat. I am not saying that. Don't make it seem like I'm saying that. There are a lot of people who would push for a meatless society, a vegan society, and there's a lot of arguments to be made for it, moral arguments and so forth. But if we just ate less, most of our farmland is being used to raise cattle for us to eat. And in fact, in terms of biomass, right now, livestock, that's cows and goats and pigs, there's more livestock biomass than human biomass by a good chunk. It's like 60-40. So
Was it they used to say that if aliens came, they'd classify humans as cow parasites?
right.
Somebody told me that once.
Right, they would go talk to the cows because they're
Right.
obviously the dominant life form.
Right. Yeah.
Right? Most of the most of the area of our planet is dedicated to feeding these and housing these
Which
cows.
is why the daddy longlegs really will tell you where the cows are, because if you follow, if you whatever direction it's pointing in, if you follow that long enough, it assuredly will hit a cow.
That's true. So what do we got? We have so far we have clean energy sources. We've got a more efficient technology in terms of less waste in terms of whatever our technology does. We've got food that's better, tastes better. If you taste an organic carrot versus a non-organic carrot, you immediately could taste the difference in terms of chemicals and stuff. And the organics are better. One thing I have, I have a T-shirt that I am actually wearing it right now. It was from the 1990s because Greenpeace did a tour of the Great Lakes on one of their boats. I think is it the Rainbow Warrior. I don't
Probably.
remember the name of their boat, but it was the Zero Toxics tour. Okay, because back then the environmental movement was strong enough that people actually were talking about eliminating pollution completely.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah. And that, again, that is within our technological abilities.
Yeah.
We do not have to have any smokestacks. We do not have to have any discharge pipes. People make the economic argument that, not allowing pollution makes things more expensive. But in every case, allowing the pollution increases the expense for everybody else. So it increases the profits for the people that are allowed to just dump stuff in the environment instead of taking care of it. But that means that the rest of us have less fresh water, less good food, fewer fish, fewer birds. And so I think a green future eventually has zero pollution, air, water, and ground. And what we've already done is we've assured employment for the next 1,000 years of future generations to clean up what we've already created.
Well, that's great.
So not just stop polluting, but also go back and clean up what we've already done. And kind of at the heart of this is the attitude that we have to have, this attitude that humans and nature are actually intertwined. We're not really separable. And so everything we do that hurts nature hurts us. And once we've got that in our brains, then we can start looking at nature with a sense of gratitude and a sense of well-being. When you see an eagle fly overhead, you know that the surrounding environment has to be clean enough that eagle can catch fish that aren't laden with DDT or mercury. Just the fact that you're seeing a live eagle sharing the space with you says that your environment has to have a certain level of cleanliness, a certain level of healthiness. And the more we are able to do that, the healthier we are as a society. And this idea, our idea, is that we have to separate ourselves from nature. We have to have these smooth lawns that are, and all our houses have to be these islands with a moat of like a lawn defense around us because we can't let nature encroach. I think what we're going to have, and we're already seeing it, a lot of people are doing this with the Back to Nature lawn movement, where they plant wildflowers and they encourage bees and pollinators to live in their lawns instead of having the monotone green moat around their properties. I see progress in all these areas, okay? And I think that we're going to have to stop. Well, we know because the scientists are telling us we have to stop clear cutting everything. We have to get rid of these lawns. We have to let the forests come back because the forests need to take all this extra CO2 out of the air that we've put in there. And, once we've done all these things, once we've changed our energy policies, changed our food policies, changed our attitude towards nature and allowed it to be itself and kind of reveled in that and once we're grateful for that, then we're going to see all kinds of amazing things happen, like bird migrations that last 3 or 4 days, that you can just see millions of birds going overhead. Imagine if the Maumee River, again, was full of salmon, so full of salmon that you could walk across the, we already have our,
I can imagine. There's already people who like to go down there and fish in it. There'd probably be a lot more.
yeah, we have our walleye run. And the walleye run is an example of what you can do when you start prioritizing nature, because that walleye run gives billions of dollars of fishing tourism into our area, and people go home with literally tons of fish that they can, that put in their freezers and eat all year round. And that is only because we have prioritized the walleye to the point of protecting the waters they're living in, making regulations around when they can be taken and how much they can be taken, and we monitor their populations so that we know, how they're doing and we don't overfish. And, when you start treating nature that way, when you start making it a priority, then the rewards are immense and you can't actually quantify them. And because, we don't actually, it's been so long since we've had a healthy ecosystem here in North America that we don't even have an idea in our head of what a green future could be. And that's why I wanted to talk to you about it today at our at our year-end show. And because, as I said at the beginning, we get so hung up on the things that are preventing the green future from happening, sometimes we forget what we're actually fighting for. And so that was it. That was my big rant for today. What did you think? If you have any comments, or if you have some other idea or something in your head that, something that should be happening in a green future, we got the rest of the show. You can still call in 877-909-1007 or text 419-973-5841. Okay, now it's time to hear from our wonderful patrons and sponsors. For a Green Future is brought to you by the Wood County Park District.
Imagine a place where nature meets adventure, where you can climb, paddle, fish, and explore. That place? It's right here in Wood County. The Wood County Park District is here to protect, preserve, and inspire. We conserve natural and cultural treasures so you can enjoy the outdoors like never before by maintaining green spaces, providing fun programs, restoring wildlife habitats, and leading outdoor adventures. The Wood County Park District, preserving nature, creating adventure, and inspiring a greener future.
Want to connect with nature? Try your hand at archery, bouldering, geocaching, paddling, rappelling, and more. Whether you're seeking experience or a peaceful retreat, our parks are open every day from 8 a.m. to 30 minutes past sunset all year round. Come explore, get outside, experience nature. Your parks, your adventures waiting for you. Find us online at wcparks.org or follow on Instagram, Facebook, or X, or call 419-353-1897. The Wood County Park District, preserving nature, creating adventure, and inspiring a greener future. We also want to thank our patrons. Patrons are wonderful people who've gone to patreon.com. That's Patreon. There they searched for a Green Future. Up popped our Patreon page. They searched for a level of membership that matched their budget, or they created their own level of membership. And every month a little bit comes out of their accounts, comes over to us, and that's how we can afford to keep this show on the air. So thank you to our patrons, and Happy New Year to our patrons too. And one other note from me and the entire For a Green Future team: the future isn't imagined, it's built. We are renovating For a Green Future to fit the needs of every generation. New leadership, a refreshed mission, and a digital backbone powered by AI to deliver timely climate action right to you. We hired Shabazz Khan as our media and communications specialist. Our media and communications will be connecting people with science, solutions, and stories that matter faster, clearer, and more accessible than ever. The torch is steady, the flame is bright, and the message is simple. Care for the climate, care for each other, and act with knowledge, because the future belongs to those who prepare today. Visit Joe DeMare forAgreenfuture.org to join, learn, and act. Okay, there we go. All right, Rebecca, it is now your turn at the mic.
Alrighty. Well, coming up tomorrow, actually, is going to be something called National Pepper Pot Day.
Pepper pot.
I found out today, yeah, according to the National Day calendar
Okay.
website. And, this immediately, it made me think about a book I read when I was a kid called The Hannah by Marguerite D'Angeli.
Okay.
And I remember it was, I think, set in Philadelphia. I'm not sure, but it had some lady going by in the street yelling, "Pepper pot, all hot, make you back strong, make you live long, come by my pepper pot." So
Okay.
I remembered that had something to do with something in my past. And pepper pot, it turns out, I've now discovered, I didn't really know what it was before, is a soup with peppercorns in it, a highly seasoned soup. And it according to the National Day calendar, again, it was made on the East Coast by women of Afro-Caribbean origin. As they made it in their houses, they sold it on the street as one of the first fast foods, quote unquote, in America.
Ah, interesting.
And yeah, so then, like, I went down, my eye went down, and there was a thing like an article about Guyanese pepper pot, Guyana being a country in South America. And they said, let's see, that it actually has Amerindian origins, according to this recipe thing. And one of the thing is, it has cassava sauce. Cassava is a big Aboriginal crop, and it's like a starchy root vegetable, basically. It's not really related to anything else, that we eat. But it's also called yucca or manioc, and it can be ground into flour and used in tapioca. I guess when you as a flour, it's popular as a non-gluten type of flour you can make baked goods out of. And as tapioca, it's used as a starch or a thickener, so it serves both of those purposes. Really, most of the information you immediately run across when you look up cassava has to do with how to eat it, how to cook and eat it. But, oh, by the way, you got to cook it really good to remove the cyanide.
Oh.
Yeah, so make sure you know what you're doing. Like, if in case anybody is listening in Guyana and they're like, "Oh, I never heard of cassava. I'm going to go out and just, bite one." Don't do that. Don't do it. So, but it is very high in vitamins and also fiber, and also carbs and calories, unfortunately. So, you get the good and the bad there. Some of the benefits environmentally is that it contributes to climate. It has a lot of climate resilience, meaning it tolerates drought and poor soils, and also requires little watering and not very many chemicals or fertilizers, pesticides, any of that stuff. It's pretty resistant to things. It improves soil health because it has really deep roots. So it prevents erosion. It sequesters carbon. It absorbs heavy metals also, and it's a possible high-yield alternative to soy because you get a lot of cassava per cassava field, apparently. And some of the problems are, okay, like a lot of things, it tends to be grown in monoculture, which is bad. So that can cause deforestation because, you're cutting down trees to make your plantation or whatever. Then soil degradation, water pollution, it reduces the biodiversity, contributes to air pollution, mostly because hydrogen and cyanide gas come from the waste. If you just if you don't dispose of it properly and use, which you can use it to make methane gas, and then you use all of the plant.
You have to be a little careful about tossing cassava onto the compost pile?
Yeah, maybe. Yeah, if you've got cassava,
Okay.
Well, really, you have to have a lot of cassava before
You get
it
fatal
becomes a problem.
levels of
Yeah,
cyanide.
but yeah,
Okay.
if you're ever if you're ever near a dump with a lot of leftover cassava leaves and peelings and whatnot, don't loom over it and take a deep breath. Don't go. That's not what
Right.
you want to do there.
No dead cassava huffing.
Yeah,
Right.
obviously the starch extraction produces waste, and another thing is that heavy metals that get leached into your cassava plant aren't good to eat. So there's that. You want to. That's a downside there, unless you're making sure there aren't any heavy metals in the soil. And also, the monoculture makes them vulnerable to something called cassava mosaic virus. So, the downside to them being so resilient is that they're often grown in fragile environments where they can be damaging, like on a hillside or, soil that's environments that are already badly injured. So, that's according to the Fund for Agricultural Development. So yeah, it's in some ways like its greatest strength are also its greatest weaknesses. But you got to balance stuff. You got to think: is this the right crop for this area? How am I going to do this to be minimally environmentally a problem?
Alrighty.
So yeah, it's good unless you overdo it, like a lot of things.
Okay, cool. I don't think I've ever had cassava.
Me
but,
neither. No. Yeah.
if there's any cassava aficionados out there, you can give us a call and
Indeed.
tell us why you like them.
I wonder if you can get cassavas in Greater Toledo. Probably not. I'm guessing
Well,
no.
there's another question for our
Yeah.
listeners. If you're a cassava eater, who's your supplier? Where are you
Right.
getting this stuff? So, all right. Well, thank you, Rebecca.
Welcome.
And now it's time for ecological news. And our first story, this was December 16th. This is a story from the American Meteorological Society. And actually, a lot of places have covered this because it was so outrageous. On X on December 16th, the Trump administration announced that they are dismantling the National Center for Atmospheric Research, which is in Boulder, Colorado, and it is literally the premier scientific body that studies atmospheric sciences in the world. I mean, literally, we have the best lab on planet Earth, and the Trump administration's getting rid of it because if you're an actual scientist and you actually study the atmosphere, you know that there's such a thing as global warming.
Yeah.
However, the fantasy that the Trump administration is pushing that directly conflicts with that fantasy, and so of course, what has to go are the scientists, because not.
Because he doesn't even know until he's gets surrounded by a tsunami on one side and a wildfire on the other.
Well, and one of the main reasons, there's a lot of people up in arms about this, and one of the main things that they're saying is that one of the main jobs of the National Center for Atmospheric Research is to predict when there's going to be storms and floods and droughts by looking at the data. And they have literally saved thousands of lives. Yeah. I mean, we just had an atmospheric river out there in California. You might have seen that on the news, where they had just incredible amounts of rain, both in Washington State and now it moved down into California. And they actually predicted that. They warned people. And they said, there's probably going to be flash floods here, here, and here.
Yeah.
So you folks need to get out of your houses now before the storm hits. And that's why we can have storms with billions of dollars in damage and only have a half a dozen fatalities or so, because we have such a good National Center for Atmospheric Research. And so the Trump administration's decision to just literally wipe it out, just fire everybody.
And who's going to put that back together again?
Yeah, it would take. He could wipe it out in a year, but it would take decades to recreate it because they all these folks know what they're doing.
Yeah.
And the one thing a person who doesn't know what they're doing can't stand is somebody who does actually know what they're doing.
It seems like that. Yes.
Yeah, and so if you put a person like that in charge, you're asking for trouble, and you're getting it. So the American Meteorological Society, these are all the meteorologists that tell your local weather. They've got a big society together. And they know how much what they do depends on having this resource from the federal government. And so they're The Guardian did an article on this on December 22nd with the title, Trump's Shuttering of NCAR is Stalinist. And they also pointed out that Trump did this after getting $75 million in donations from the oil and gas industry. And specifically, they raised the ghost of this fellow named Lysenko, who was a scientist in the Soviet Union who had all these bizarre theories about how crops grow. And politically, he forced all the scientists in the Soviet Union to follow his theories, even though most of them were wrong.
Right.
Even though it caused, huge, famines and people were dying of hunger because what he thought was true was not. And so this is pretty terrible. This was announced by one of Trump's billionaires, Russell Vogt. He's the fellow who wrote Project 2025, and part of Project 2025 was the dismantling of science, because that conflicts politically with what the people who wrote Project 2025 wanted to happen. The American Meteorological Society is a cool organization. They just did a review of, back in September, the Department of Energy, released a climate report, the 2025 climate report, and the Meteorological Society.org, AMETSOC.org, they just tore it apart. They said it lacked breadth, it lacked depth, it was unrepresentative because they only put 5 scientists who are all climate deniers are the ones who wrote this report. They cherry-picked the data, and they only looked at the upside of global warming. So they said there is no global warming, but we won't have to shovel nearly as much snow.
Okay.
So this thing that's
how is
not
that?
happening is better.
Yeah,
is good.
right.
No, so
Okay. That's a little confusing, but
so that's worth knowing, though, that Trump is in the process of doing this, and let's hope somebody can stop him, because we need that information, now more than ever. Okay, next story. phys.org on December 26th. So here's an upbeat story. Elusive wildcat, feared extinct, rediscovered in Thailand. So there is a very cute cat. It's called the flat-headed cat, and it has it's kind of unique in that its eyes are pretty much round. You think of cats having those, pointy cat eyes. Well, flat-headed cats have eyes that are closer together in the front of their face, and they're round, so their faces look more human than the average cat. So
wow.
they're in Southeast Asia. They have a dwindling habitat. They like marshes and things, and those are being drained. But there's a wildlife sanctuary there in Thailand, and the first flat-headed cats since 1995 were spotted. So they've been, it's been 30 years since they've spotted a flat-headed cat in Thailand, in the entire country, and now they're back.
More kitties is always good, even if they won't let you pet them.
Yeah. And one of the pictures, it's hard to tell them apart. They don't have distinctive markings like some animals, but one of the pictures that the trail cam caught was a female with a cub. So they are reproducing. There have been 29 detections, and they're, people and the conservationists in Thailand are very happy. So are we. Okay, so that was your good news. Back to bad news. Earth.org. 2025, one of the costliest years for climate disasters, report says. And there's an organization called Christian Aid, and they did a study using insurance data from an insurance company called Aon, A-O-N, and they said that 2025 so far, the climate disasters have cost about $120 billion. And I don't know, that seems low to me, but they had the numbers. The most expensive disaster so far, because the year's not over, we could still top this, but the most expensive disaster so far is the Palisades fire.
Yeah,
and that was
sense.
set at $60 billion, and there were about 450 deaths. Second most the expensive disaster was the cyclones in Asia, Southeast Asia, that we reported on last week. that have been largely ignored by the U.S. press. They really have not covered those, but they caused $25 billion in damage, and about 2,000 people lost their lives. Number 3, it was flooding in China, and that was about $21 billion from those. So those are the top 3 disasters, but they are very careful to point out that this is literally only the short-term damage. This is only the,
Right.
It claims on insurance companies added up together. And as we have reported, these disasters actually affect the local economy for, like a decade or 2, because it takes a long time when that level of infrastructure has been destroyed to get everybody back to the point where they were financially before their houses got wiped out or something like that happened. So, all right, that's earth.org. And now the next story, we're back to talking about cats. This is actually a study of rats versus cats.
Okay.
And the study was originally published in Frontiers in Ecology and Evolution, and it's on the web. It's on the web at frontiersin.org. And there were these researchers who were already studying a rat colony at a recycling center in New York City. That's got to be an interesting job to be in the wild in a New York City recycling center watching rats all
Has
day.
he been accepted as one of the pack yet?
That's a good question. Well, but so they had about 100. They have this. They know this colony is about 100 rats, and they've microchipped them, so they literally can follow where they're going all day. And in the middle of this study, the recycling center was invaded by a colony of feral cats.
Oh my.
So the cats moved in, and so the question was, so are the cats going to eat all these rats? Because a lot of people have this idea that cats are big predators on rats. And the answer is not so much.
Okay.
They studied them for 80 days, and in those 80 days, the cat colony only ate 2 rats.
Right. Well, rats will bite you back,
Well,
That's-
that's it exactly.
Yeah.
The cats prefer to go for smaller prey like birds
right.
and squirrels and things that, But the interesting thing was that the presence of the rats, or the cats, changed the behavior of the rats completely.
Okay.
So once cats were on the scene, the rats got very scared and timid, and they hardly ever came out. And so what this researchers are saying is a lot of people believe that cats
Because
predate
they
on
see
rats.
less rats when there's cats around. Right.
Exactly, right.
Which is good. It's good to see less rats, I'd rather not see them even if they're around.
Right. But the truth is that the cats will only take a rat if they're really hungry, there's nothing else around for them to hunt, and they kind of have an
That
opportunity.
rat is not very smart, or it's old and slow, or
Right.
young and not very smart, or
They'll
something.
take rats of opportunity.
Right, yeah.
But they don't really hunt rats very much. They don't actually affect the population numbers that much. So just a little note, interesting note. Yeah, you'd think cats would eat more rats, but they just eat them here and there. All right, so over the Christmas break, one of the things my family watched, we, like a lot of people, we spent a lot of time watching television, and we watched Scrooged. Remember that movie, 1988, Bill Murray?
Long time ago, yeah.
Long time ago. But one of the things that happened in the Scrooged movie was that he was this horrible advertising executive that was just like totally evil, and he created a commercial for his network's retelling of a Christmas story, or of the Christmas tale, the Scrooge and Marley story. And in his ad that he had acid rain, and they showed screaming people holding umbrellas that were dissolving and running down the street, clawing at their faces. And acid rain used to be like top of the list in terms of environmental issues,
Right.
because the acid rain was being created by the smokestacks of the Ohio Valley. It was going up and sterilizing the mountain lakes and so forth in the Adirondacks. I actually started a group at that time. It was called Acid Rain Watchers, and what we did was we shared pH paper with high school science groups, and they actually would go out and test the pH of their rain, and they could literally see on the pH paper that yes, their rain was extremely acidic.
Right.
That problem has greatly reduced. All right, it's not gone. There still is some acid rain, but there were a number of things that happened. One of the main ones was the 1990 Clean Air Act. And what they happened in 1990 was they actually created a cap and trade system where they mandated the reduction in sulfur. And so that's why so many coal plants added scrubbers now. And almost every coal plant has scrubbers. We have a notable exception that we're, down there in the southern part of Ohio, a legacy plant. But most of them added scrubbers. And so what they were able to do, if they reduced the amount of sulfur they were putting into the atmosphere past what they needed to, they could sell credits to other companies that hadn't done stuff. And so they created a cap and trade, they created a market, but the fundamental basis of that market was the regulation that overall sulfur levels have to be cut by this much.
So it could
whether
come
you like
back,
it or
is
not.
what you're saying.
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
And so between the mandated cuts and the reality of coal plants no longer being economical, because wind and solar are so much cheaper, natural gas is so much cheaper, they're easier to maintain, and coal plants are mammoth things with thousands and thousands of moving parts that are constantly breaking down. So all these things have gotten together, and the acid rain problem is not gone, but it's vastly reduced. And so forests now are recovering from acid rain all over the east coast of the United States.
In Bavaria, they called it the Waldsterben.
The Waldsterben?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So
in the Black Forest.
But I wanted to talk about this one just because it's a reminder. Well, first, Scrooge reminded me of it, but it is a reminder that once we focus on it, we can solve problems like this. And there's an interesting story in phys.org on October 23rd, and it was talking about a study that was originally in the Proceedings of the National Academy of Sciences. They have a place, White Mountains in New Hampshire. They have a place called the Hubbard Brook Experimental Forest. And what they did was they took 3 areas in the forest. One they clear cut. One they just added a whole bunch of calcium, 100,000 pounds of calcium, and another part where they did nothing, in order to see how these forests recover now that the acid rain has stopped. And what they found was that plants actually change the rate at which they dissolve rocks based on how acidic their environment is. And so the plants, especially the beech trees in the clear-cut forest, went with their roots and started attacking all the rocks to get the calcium out, because that is a buffer against acid rain.
Oh my gosh, wow.
Which has positive and negative effects. Positively, the local streams are habitable because they free up this calcium that gets into the water, which neutralizes the acid in the area, and so the streams are healthier there. But unfortunately, it also impoverishes the soil more, because instead of these nutrients slowly seeping in and building up, they get rooted out and they get washed into the waterways when there's rain and stuff.
Wow.
So the treated area and the do-nothing area, their soils are healthier and have more nutrients. But in the clear-cut area, the local waterways are less acidic. So it's it's an interesting thing in terms of trees and plants being a much more active in controlling the chemistry of the forest than you would think. You'd think it was just kind of a passive thing that happens to them. But nope, they're actually in there changing stuff all the time. Yeah, we think we're the only ones that change stuff, but actually trees are pretty good at it too. All right, final story. Speaking of trees and clear cutting, this was actually a story on July 17th. Clear cutting makes catastrophic floods 18 times more likely.
Yowza.
And has a 40-year effect. And they did a study with the Coweta Hydrologic Laboratory in North Carolina, and they found that on the north-facing slopes of the hills, once they clear cut, flood sizes increased from 47% to 105%.
Uh-oh.
And that effect has lasted for 40 years. Now, interestingly, the hills on the south side, they have not seen an increase in flooding in terms of volume or, so there was no effect on the south side, but it's just a reminder that this idea that you can just go in and clear cut and then everything will just come back.
And this is where we had catastrophic flooding a couple years ago.
Yes, North Carolina, exactly.
Right.
Right. And
Maybe not a coincidence.
And so they clear cut, they probably clear cut north facing slopes,
Yeah.
which don't get as much sun, where plants grow more slowly. It's harder for them to get a foothold and cover the ground again and prevent it from washing away.
Right.
And so the floods are worse, like twice as bad. And so it's just a reminder, folks, that, in a green future, we would pay attention to stuff like that before we said, okay, you can go in and clear cut this area. We would know what the effects of it were,
Right.
instead of what we're doing now, which is, look at this 40-year study. We were idiots. We shouldn't have clear cut this area. So in a green future, we'll actually apply the ecological knowledge that we're gaining every day. And so that's why we're bringing you this show, folks, is so that you can gain a little bit of this ecological knowledge that we're all learning. We're continuing to learn new things about the environment every day, and I'm grateful for that. And I'm grateful for you folks. Thanks for listening. This is Joe DeMare.
And Rebecca Wood.
We are signing off.
The sun done give us all we need to make this country run. But that black demon oil's got us fussing and fighting, and I do believe it's time we was done. I don't want them nukes run by them kooks who think radioactivity is fun. No more three-headed frogs or kids with leukemia. Nuclear power ain't fit for a dog. The sun done give us all we need to make this country run. But that nuclear power's got us fussing and fighting, and I do believe it's time we was done.